Far out in the deepest ocean, where the water is as blue as the petals of the loveliest cornflower and as clear as the purest crystal, stood the palace of the Sea King. The Sea King was a widower, and his great coral palace was managed by his aged mother. She was a wise woman, proud of her noble birth, and it was she who cared for the upbringing of the king's 6 daughters. Each princess was a mermaid, born 1 year apart. They were all beautiful, with long flowing hair and shimmering tails, but the youngest was the most beautiful of all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose petal. Her eyes were as blue as the deepest sea. Unlike her older sisters, she wore no pearls, no heavy jewels. Around her hair she placed only a wreath of fresh white lilies, and every petal seemed to reflect the gentle kindness of her heart. But it was not her beauty that set her apart. She was quiet and thoughtful, often sitting in her garden of red sea flowers, listening to the faint echoes from the world above. More than anything in all the ocean, she longed to rise to the surface and see the lands where humans lived. "You poor child," her grandmother would say kindly. "We live better lives than those above. Humans are fleeting, fragile creatures. They must die while we may live for 300 years. True, we turn to foam in the end, but what is that to mortals who wither so soon? But they have souls that live forever," the little mermaid would whisper. "I would give all my years just to gaze on the wonders of mankind and win an immortal soul." When a mermaid reached the age of 15, she was allowed to swim to the surface for the first time and see the world above. The eldest sister went first. When she returned, her eyes shone as she told them about moonlight on the sea, ships with tall masts and music drifting across the water. Each year, another sister rose and brought back new stories of fields of flowers, flocks of birds, cities that glittered with lights, and icebergs that shone like diamonds. The little mermaid listened to every word, her heart swelling with longing. Each tale made her desire to see the human world even stronger. At last, her own 15th year arrived. On the evening of her birthday, she rose at twilight to the surface of the sea. The air was warm and soft. The sky was full of stars. Before her lay a grand ship with lanterns strung like constellations along its rigging. Music floated over the waves, and laughter echoed across the water. Curious, she swam closer and peered through a cabin window. Inside, the ship was filled with celebration. At the center stood a young prince. He was handsome, with dark eyes and a warm smile, and the sailors treated him with deep respect, for it was his birthday too. The little mermaid gazed at him in wonder. To her, he seemed the most radiant being she had ever seen. She stayed half hidden among the waves, listening to the music and watching him as the night grew late, and the stars turned slowly overhead. Then a storm arose. The calm sea turned black and wild. Winds howled, lightning split the sky, and waves crashed over the deck. "We are going to sink," came the cries. "Help! We're going down!" The mast snapped. The ship shuddered and broke apart under the fury of the storm. The crew was thrown into the boiling sea. The little mermaid dived into the chaos, searching desperately for the prince. At last, she saw him sinking unconscious into the depths. She wrapped her arms around him, held his head above the water, and let the waves carry them. By morning, the storm had passed. The sea was calm again, and not a single piece of the ship remained. The prince looked peaceful in the pale light of dawn, and as she gazed at his face, a new and powerful longing awoke in her heart. She gently kissed his forehead and brushed back his wet hair. In the distance, she saw land, a shore near a quiet temple with gardens and white walls. With all her strength, she swam until they reached the shallows. There she laid him on the sand near the temple steps and hid behind a rock, watching. Soon the bells of the temple rang, and a young maiden walked through the gardens. At that moment, the prince stirred. When he opened his eyes, it was upon the maiden that his gaze first fell. The little mermaid slipped quietly back into the sea, her heart aching. He would never know who had saved him. From that day on, she thought of nothing but the prince and the immortal soul she hoped to gain through his love. She no longer played in the coral gardens or joined in her sister's songs. Instead, she often swam to the very place where she had brought him ashore, gazing toward the land and wondering if he remembered the feeling of being held through the storm. Even if he could not remember her face, at last, she could bear her secret no longer and confided in one of her sisters. Soon all 5 knew, and then 2 of their mermaid friends. One of these friends had a companion who lived closer to the shore and often rose to the surface. This companion had seen the festival on the prince's ship and recognized him. She told the Little Mermaid who he was and where his palace stood upon the shore. From that moment, the Little Mermaid swam often near the land where the prince lived. She hid among the rocks and watched him walk in his gardens or ride his horse along the shore. Though she never dared to approach him, her heart was filled with bittersweet joy whenever she caught even a glimpse of him. At last, she went to her grandmother. "Do humans truly live forever?" she asked, "even after their bodies die?" "Yes," her grandmother replied. "We of the sea may live 300 years, but when we die, we become nothing but foam upon the waves. Humans, however, have a soul that rises to the stars and lasts for all eternity." "Oh," whispered the Little Mermaid, "I would give all my 300 years for just one day as a human, if it meant gaining a soul." "Humans never speak of such folly," her grandmother said sadly. "Now come, child. Tonight we will hold a grand ball at court." The great hall of the Sea King's palace was prepared with dazzling beauty. A broad, clear stream of seawater flowed through the center, wide enough for dancers to glide in pairs. Mermen and mermaids twined and spun through the current, their hair streaming behind them like ribbons. The Little Mermaid was called forward to sing. She lifted her voice, and at once the other music fell silent. None could compare with the clarity and sweetness of her song. It was full of longing and hidden sorrow, though no one knew its true meaning. The court applauded wildly, and for a brief moment her heart felt light. She knew that her voice was lovelier than any in the sea, or even on the earth above. Yet even in her triumph, her thoughts drifted away from the shining hall and back to the prince and the human world. As laughter and dancing filled the palace, she slipped quietly away to her little garden and sank down among her sea flowers. From far above, a faint sound reached her, clear and distant, a bugle horn blowing over the sea. Her heart leapt. "He is sailing there," she thought. "I will venture everything for him, for his love, and for the immortal soul only his love can give me. Tonight," she decided, "while my sisters dance in the palace, I will go to the sea witch, whom I have always feared. She alone has the power to help me." With her mind set, she left her garden and swam into the darkest part of the ocean, where the water was black and twisted plants writhed like serpents. There, in a cave lit by glowing bones, dwelt the sea witch. "I know what you seek." "Child," the witch said as the Little Mermaid entered, "you desire the love of a prince and the immortal soul that may follow. I can give you a potion," the witch continued. "Drink it and your tail will split into 2 human legs. You will walk as humans do, though every step will feel as if knives are piercing your feet. Still, you will dance more gracefully than any mortal. But heed this. Once you become human, you can never return to the sea. If the prince marries another, your heart will break, and you will dissolve into foam at dawn." The Little Mermaid trembled, but the witch was not finished. "And your voice? Child, your most precious gift you must give to me." The Little Mermaid's hand flew to her throat. "But without my voice," she whispered, "how shall I tell him that I love him?" "You have your beauty," the witch replied, "your grace and your eyes, which can speak more than words. Now, do you accept my bargain?" The Little Mermaid thought of the prince, of the human soul she longed for, and of the life she would leave behind. Then she lifted her head. "I will do it," she said. The witch drew out a small shell, cold and gleaming. "The vessel for your voice," she said. She cast a spell, and the Little Mermaid felt her song pulled from her throat and trapped inside the shell. Her voice was gone. In exchange, she received a small vial of potion. The Little Mermaid swam to the shore near the prince's kingdom and drank the potion as the first light of dawn touched the waves. Pain like fire shot through her body, and she fell senseless on the sand. When she awoke, the sun was rising.